Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning for a drop-in session around the Dare UK TRE Early Adoption Funding Call. Just an opportunity for you to talk to the transformational programme, Treevolution leads, for them to explain the work that they are doing and that we would like you, those of you who are applying for funding, to work with. So just a bit of an insight into what exactly it is that they are doing. And then at the end, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions and for us to do our best to answer those questions. So I'm going to hand over to Emily, who's the director of the Dare UK programme, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. Fergus, are you controlling the slide deck or?
I've got the
Michelle's
power today.
If you wouldn't mind clicking the next slide, please. So for those of you who may be aware, we ran a TRE Frontiers meeting in October, and some of you on the call may well have attended this particular event. Just recapping it for those of you who either weren't there, but also just to put this the presentation that we ran through in context of this particular call. So as part of the DARE Phase 2 work, we're doing a significant amount of effort into what we're calling the transformational programme. And this transformational programme has three components to it: to develop new capabilities into production readiness, for trusted research environments to test, configure and adopt these new capabilities, and then for research using the new capabilities. Next slide, next click, please. So the so what? The idea for this, if you could just click through all of them, that'd be great. Thanks, Michelle. So the idea of the new capabilities here are to enable faster, fitter, fit-for-purpose federated analytics across data domains for research, for automation, for faster and cheaper research, for new research using things like AI models within trusted research environments, for there to be less effort for researchers to move from one TRE to another, and for a reduction in the cost for TREs, for more funds for research rather than having to pay for this infrastructure. And so this is what the transformational programme is supposed to deliver. So if you can just click through. So the Treevolution programme is developing these new capabilities into production readiness. And so you have people who are co-leads on Treevolution here talking through the programme today. And this was a closed call because it built upon 4 different driver programmes that had all implemented various different components that we needed to bring together into one programme to do this work. This particular call for trusted research environments to test, configure and adopt these ones are going to be working with the Treevolution programme. And so this is an open call, so we're fair and transparent to many different trusted research environments to put in applications to work with the Treevolution programme in order to test these new capabilities. And then the last thing is to run in the last year of DARE Phase 2, and that's for actually using these new capabilities and these new infrastructures on some real-world projects testing these capabilities. So that's the wider context of the transformational programme. And I think I'm handing over to someone else there.
Yeah, I think that would be me. Michelle, if I can have the next slide. I'm Jim Smith, for those of you who haven't had the joy of meeting me yet. So when we were brought together, we did what you always try and do, I guess, when you're thinking about a project. You think about the vision of where you want to get to, and you inevitably come up with a vision statement which maybe got too many syllables in it. But there are a few really key principles that we wanted to see, that we felt was necessary to enable research, to maximise research for the public good. And I think that's important to think. That's at the heart of what we're trying to achieve with everything here. So we think that involves researchers being able to interact with data using familiar tools, using workflows that they can find in a fair way and reuse and build on other people's experience, as if the data was all in one place. So We're not saying that we're going to get there within 18 months, necessarily 2 years, but certainly the idea that it should be as if the data's there for you wherever it is, and researchers shouldn't have to worry as much about the complexity of where the data is. So in order to underpin that, we obviously need a secure network on a project level basis, and that needs to be based on platform independent common standards that we can demonstrate how these could work, but obviously leave space for other people to come in and produce their own implementations within the same framework with the same common understanding to enable interoperability. We will produce reference implementations for a whole bunch of different parts of it, bits of the program in different states of sort of readiness so far, and that all of this will be supported by computational auto-assisted processes that, right from the stage of setting up a network and agreeing about what TRE's capabilities are and whether TREs can trust each other, through to disclosure control at the other end of the process, are supported by these computational processes whilst maintaining human oversight, because public trust is key to all of this. Yeah, this is public data that we're talking about in the large part. So we need to be really careful when we're introducing this technology about how we're introducing change, how do we build on the strong IG foundations of TREs, and we recognise that that means a piece of work around how do we help data controllers along that process of deciding whether and how they want to implement this. Next slide, please. And yeah, if you can click through all the ones on this slide. So there's three themes emerging out there. There's a whole big piece about federated analysis, bringing together from data from all sorts of different sources, more computationally demanding research using things like AI, greater volume of research, meaning you need automated output checking, and underpinning all of this has got to be standards and implementations. So all of the work that was done through projects like SARTA and Teleports and Trifix. So what we did over the course of the summer and mostly the autumn was to an awful lot of brainstorming, pulling apart the good bits of those programs, thinking about how we can rebuild them. And at this stage, I've got, for people who can remember the $6 million man on TV, I've got that the strap line from that about pulling things back and rebuilding them stronger, faster, better, running in my head, because that's the general point about tree evolution. It's bringing together the best bits and of all these different projects before and figure out how they'll work together based on our objectives, which are around common standards underpinning everything and metadata, real-time semi-automated decision support, because we know the public, generally speaking, want to be able to transparency and see how decisions are being made around their data, standardizing compute environments for scaling analytics, and being able to provide more of the common user experience wherever it is that they happen to be doing their research, enabling a secure TRE network to do research on a project by project basis, and all the way along this maintaining trust and working very, very closely with TRE UK to do this. But also this has got to be cost cutting across public, industry and government. And I guess that's where this call is about, is how do we make sure that we're talking with the right people, that we're co-designing this with the right people to make sure this is actually going to work in practice. So can I have the next slide, please? So this is where kind of the practicality bit comes in. This is a short time duration. It's got some unusual spend profiles. So we have to be very mindful of the time frame and resource practicality. So yes, we really, really want to do co-design with people, many of whom may well be on this call. We're mindful of the fact that people have got other projects to run, that we've got other things to do. So we're going to need to finalize bits around how the co-design works to make it as efficient as possible once the project starts, which we'll come on to in a moment. And we're not saying that we're going to build out everything as a one size, this is the approach, take it or leave it. It's about producing standards and approaches and pilots and working with people who have implementations for different parts of it as well, to make sure that it will work together in a seamless, interoperable future. Next slide, please. So this is the last. So how do we do this? Well, it's a great big project. Clearly, we're doing this together, but we have people with oversight on particular themes. So Simon, who's in the middle of my screen from Swansea, is going to be leading on the technical components around to how do we build these virtual networks and bring everyone together. Stian at Manchester is leading on the design of all the metadata and how they get brought in to be at the heart of everything. I'm going to be leading on the disclosure control aspects and the data governance view of things. Chris Cole from Dundee is going to be leading on the Trevolution profile, which I wrongly think of as in a nutshell, it's kind of Sartre on steroids, but it's also much more than that because it's an actionable, implementable thing. And integrate, so it's about how do we integrate and define TRE's capabilities and what's needed there. And then Phil Quinlan, who's the PI on the project, had the joy of bringing all this work together, but he's also going to be doing a lot of the work thinking about connection to other federated platforms, international partnerships, and things like this to make sure that what we did is embedded within the ecosystem that we know exists internationally. Next slide, please. So how we've organised. So we hope to get project approval in late January or Feb 2025. So in March 25, we're in our kickoff. We're having a really rapid design and co-design period, getting together as many stakeholders as we can. Projects that are able to start earlier than that will be fantastic in helping us define that phase. So we're looking to get lots of people together physically where possible, probably in Nottingham in March, to really thrash out, make sure we brought everyone on board with that. So that's a key early co-design bit. And then for the year after that is we've got two work packages going on simultaneously, which is about rapid joint builds, focusing on deployability, focusing building out capability, but where we've got existing things, building out the usability and dealing with people on trying out bits and pieces, finding out what there needs to be done while we've still got time to do it in the rest of the program. Lots of work around governance, PIE there, and compatibilities. And then from April 26 onwards, it's about real world deployment, taking all the feedback we had before and building it out as a single integrated operational stack to demonstrate readiness. And at this stage, I think Lee's going to take over from me.
Yep. So hi, I'm Simon Lee. I'm an infrastructure engineer up in Dundee and also one of the co-chairs of the UK TRE community. And I'll be talking about what are we actually looking for from you, everyone. So just to begin with, as Jim emphasised, this is not about necessarily putting everything into production right now or immediate future. It's about getting us into a position where we know how to get things into production over the next, say, couple of years. So, and what we're really looking for is to get input from everyone about all aspects of Trevolution. So just for anyone doesn't know, all the projects that are in Trevolution, they were originally funded as their pilot projects. We did a lot of work on them. Most of them have had really good feedback. And now the idea of Trevolution is that we'll bring it together as a coherent single project because there's a lot of synergies between them and there's a lot of overlaps. So how we hope to work? Well, the first thing is we're going to look at co-designing all the work we're doing. So say we're looking to get these ultimately into production in the future. And at risk of stating the obvious, the only way we know whether things can work in production is to deploy them in a production-like environment. And it's not enough for us to deploy it in our own production environments to be relevant across the UK and potentially even beyond. We really need your help. So we'll be looking to sort of work with you and talk to you continuously throughout the projects, just to say, get your input and think, we'll show you what we've done so far, get your feedback. You can tell us, is it going to work? Maybe it's great. Maybe we've missed something really obvious that we just don't have experience of. That sort of feedback is going to be really valuable, especially early on in the project, but also later on. As we go through the project, we'll be obviously developing lots of minimum viable products. Then those will get refined over time. And again, if you're able to, say, deploy in them in, say, your test environment, that would be great. Just just to give us feedback on like how well does it work in practice, because it's all very well as coming up with some elegant designs, but until you actually use it in practice, we've no idea how good it's going to work for everyone else. One really important aspect when working with TREs, especially new technology, is getting information governance sign-off. Again, I think a lot of people, I think most people are probably aware, at the moment, IG across the UK is quite sort of fragmented at the moment. Maybe it's not as coherent as it could be. We'll potentially be looking at some of that, at least bringing some sort of standards or frameworks that people can agree with. But ultimately, if you're running a TRE, you're the ones who's going to have to convince your information governance or convince yourselves that the tools we're developing in Treevolution are appropriate and safe and secure for deployment in your TRE. And again, that's why we need your input. And the final thing is that although we have a lot of experience, ultimately we're not aware of everything that's going on in TREs across the UK and again beyond. So if you have done equivalent work or you know of other work that we may have missed or may be relevant to us, then please bring them to our attention and share them with us. And hopefully we can also ultimately learn from each other. So what the timeline look like? Well, the main bulk of the Treevolution project starts in March, but we do have some activities we'd like you to look at before that starts, and that's why the funding is available for January. So the first thing is to really say, well, just look at the existing outputs that they have funded in the past. So for example, with SATRA, standard architecture for TREs, the idea of that is to have a sort of standard architecture that every TRE in the UK can at least adhere to or follow. That's been published as version 1 last year. So it'd be great if you can start looking at that and maybe even evaluate yourselves against it. Then we have a lot of federation-related tools, especially Teleport and Trifix. So they were developed as pilot projects. There's some great demonstrations available. Have a look on the website. You can see some of the example deployments. And then maybe even if you want to maybe go ahead and just try that yourselves, because they're quite cool technologies, then by all means do so. But at the very least, if you're able to just read up on the existing reports and get an idea of the architectures that are proposed, that'd be great. And then similarly, for say SATCRO and grey matter, those related to safe sort of AI disclosure, disclosure for AI models, and in general semi-automated disclosure control. I mean, if you're running a TREs, you know that disclosure control, that's obviously a big issue, but it's ultimately where where if it goes wrong, you risk sensitive data coming out. Semi-automated tools will obviously help with that. That's something Jim Smith and his group have done a lot of work on. It'd be great, again, if you could at least start reading up on what they've done, maybe try some of those tools. Doesn't have to be in a production environment, just even in a laptop, just to get a feel for how they work, what the capabilities are. That'd be great. And then similarly with ML models, maybe you're dealing with them at the moment. Maybe you've kept a distance because it's just really difficult. Again, we know these tools aren't complete and ideal for everyone, but they are a start. So have a look at them if you're interested and say, well, actually, what's the next steps in, like, say, these tools? What's missing? What do we need? And ultimately, if you do have, say, some synthetic data, or maybe you even have some like real data you could try it on, but without actually taking things out of the team, I mean, that would be great. Then moving on from March, this is where the bulk of the project starts. So in March 2025, what we're hoping to do is have a load of workshops and basically bring everyone together. So this will be a mix of online and in-person workshops. We do have a significant amount of funding available to help with that. And the idea of that is to just bring everyone together, get everyone in the same room, virtual or real, and everyone just starts sharing information. So we'll we'll explain what we've done in the past already, what we're thinking of doing. If you've had a chance to read, say, through some of the published work already, we're able to get immediate feedback from you straight away, even before the project really gets off the ground. As part of this, we'll also be looking at public engagement activities. So we've got a lot of engagement activities planned, but we also know that if you're running a TRE or maybe any other sort of group or whatever, you've probably already got your own activities planned. It would make sense for us to maybe join up and share our learnings, maybe attend each other's activities, and potentially even say coordinate some joint workshops. But ultimately, a big part of this is keeping the trust of the public. And the only way to do that is to really engage with the public from the very beginning and throughout the life of the project. And then finally, as I sort of mentioned earlier, information governance is going to be a key aspect to getting these tools deployed. So we really need to talk to as many people as possible to find out, how do you interpret what your governance requirements are. We have the 5 safe framework in the UK, but every TRE probably interprets it differently. We want to understand what your interpretation is, and ultimately what your concerns might be about, say, deploying any of our tools. After March, we then move on to the first year where we actually start getting down to some work. So again, the idea of Treevolution and these was to work continuously with people out with you as partners throughout, getting continuous feedback. So that means if you're interested, you could get involved in, say, designing, building, and ultimately testing all these tools. So that might be, say, some core TRE components, could be the federation components or semi-automated disclosure control. As part of this, because federation is such an important driver at the moment in the UK, especially with what, say, the Southern report and several reports in the past, we ideally want to be looking at, say, well, are you interested in federating with us? And if so, how would you go about it? What do we need to do in practice? Like, what are the networking mechanisms we set up, both physical networking, actually in just terms of talking to each other, like how do we actually go about bringing TREs together? On this disclosure side, we'd like to basically need to start looking at, say, these semi-automated tools, trying them out in a test environment. Maybe you're able to deploy them in your production environment. Because ultimately, these aren't automated tools; these are semi-automated. That means you're always going to have, a human layer there. So actually, there's no reason you couldn't deploy them in production if you want. Then, we want continuous feedback on any sort of information governance requirements. So, say if we make a design change, we can assess that against our own TREs, but we really need input from you to say, is this design change or new proposal, is that likely to fit in with what your TRE requires? If it's not, how can we change it to make sure it does? As I say, we're going to have continuous public engagement, because ultimately, if we lose the public's trust, all of this falls over. And sorry, next slide, please. And just to emphasize that all engagement is useful. So again, just to emphasize, we're not expecting you to necessarily deploy it in production, though if you're able to, that'd be great. But we do want engagement on all aspects, basically good and bad. So ultimately, the long-term plan of Treevolution is to put all these tools in a position where they can be deployed in tiers across the UK, and where we can start building a federated network. The only way we do that is if TREs agree with what we're doing. So all feedback, even if it is think it's awful and won't possibly work, that's useful to know. And again, just to emphasize, again, do engage with us. And if you find these tools aren't good enough for you, that's fine. Let us know why. And then don't feel obliged to deploy them if you don't want. Okay, next slide, please. So how are we actually going to go about this in our side? So I think Jim's already mentioned the idea of a TRE profile. So the first idea is that actually, if we are going to federate, or even just not necessarily federate, but just start working more closely together, the first thing we need to do is to make sure TREs have some sort of agreed language between them. Especially on the information governance side, to say this is what the TRE does, this is what information governance IG we provide or enforce. And then say, if you are going to federate, then these are the IG requirements we require from other TREs to be able to federate with us. Then moving on to, say, some of the more technical requirements, like, well, how do we actually connect TREs? Well, we need to have some sort of networking between them. How we actually can do that. And this brings in also, say, other modern aspects of TRE requirements regarding, say, HPC. So a lot of TREs traditionally have been very limited in, say, what they can offer. We know there's big demand from researchers to have, say, support for HPC, AI, GPUs, and so on. As part of this work, we can actually start enabling that, because actually the requirements for, say, federation, that effectively, in a sense, you can think of that as going, well, you can also incorporate other infrastructures that might not originally have been part of a TRE. If we are going to get involved in proper federation, then for now we're working on the assumption that there'll be what we call a front door TRE. The idea that one TRE will be designated some sort of an entry point to the whole federated network for researchers that would take care of a lot of the sort of background checks and implement requirements and so on. That doesn't mean it takes care of everything. the idea of this federated network is that it's just doing some of the basic initial work where researchers enter. And from that point on, you're still free to implement and your own some IG checks and so on. And then on semi-automated disclosure control and then movement of data amongst TREs, we're trying to basically sort of mechanize that as much as possible. So, for example, we can look at RO crates for defining how data moves within a TRE and also between TREs. So, rather than having ad hoc people copying data around and so on, we can say, can we sort of define this machine readable format? And that then makes it much easier to then implement, say, additional checks or semi-automated controls and so on, as well as being really good from the auditing perspective. And that's particularly important when you move into federation, where you've got researchers or analyses of data potentially moving across TREs and you want a full audit trail. Okay, next, please. So what are we actually asking from you now then? So on the federation side, we're looking, first of all, this thing is we need an information governance model that's going to work for TREs that are going to federate. So that basically means talking to, as I already said, that means talking to any TRE who's interested, and that can start pretty much straight away, because we know at IG there's a lot of discussions involved. They can be quite thorny. We might just start them straight away. Then we'd like, say, if you are happy to, we'd like some people to get involved in just say installing our installing the implementation that we have developed. So I said we've already got some tools. For example, Sacro has already released some tools. As part of Treevolution, we're going to start bringing these.
Simon,
yep.
Simon, I think the other Simon speaks to this.
Is it? Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. So it's I would say the same things. I guess it's, as someone who runs TREs, and many of you do run in TREs, I think the information governance model is the key thing, in the fact that we're not looking to change the model of today. We're looking to evolve it. I think it's also important that the the aspiration here is not to lift and shift all the data, but merely to create a federated plane between the data. And I think that's an important concept, because I mean the name is not the name of the project is not a mistake. We're not looking for to reinvent the world. We're looking to kind of take it to TRE 2.0, if you like, to kind of evolve what the governance model is today to become the governance model of tomorrow. And I guess as part of that, we are building everything on international standards such as GA4, GH-TERS and RO crates and so on and so forth. And therefore the ask really is, can you implement some of the tools like Simon said, like Sacro is very mature right now and I think probably bring benefit today on day one. But some of these concepts are very new perhaps to you as a TRE. And like all new international standards, there's an element of you reading the documentation and aligning yourself to understand what it actually is, so that, again, you can participate better. So I think that's really important. Simon touched earlier about synthetic data. I think it's obvious to everybody, of course, that synthetic data is going to be needed to kind of flush the pipes and test some of this out. So again, an investment in synthetic data or access to synthetic data or even fake data to really try this out. We can't possibly try this new architecture on real data going forwards. But so how do we create that synthetic data? How do we kind of make that synthetic data available for testing and so on and so forth? And then I think we are looking for groups of TREs that can kind of, I mean, Simon said it really eloquently in the last few slides. When we know that we can't possibly have got it all right. So therefore, tell us what we're missing, tell us what we need, tell us what the aim is. Because I think the real goal of this entire phase is that perhaps by the beginning of 2026, we've addressed every single gap that there is, so that there's no impediment to actually installing this and for actual real science to happen. So in some ways, 2025 is kind of working out the barriers and knocking the barriers down. 2025 is kind of making sure that all the requirements are there and the models are matured, so that in 2026 we can actually do this and we can actually let real users, possibly against real data. Obviously, we have to move at the speed of everyone's risk appetite. But if the more we engage with a more diverse set of people, then we're likely to fulfill most of the requirements by that time. Can we have the next slide, please? So again, we're asking about, that's what I ask for federation, but the ask for Sacro is, you know, right now you can try out Sacro because it's very mature when it comes to statistical closure control, i.e. normal data. But how do you operationalize it as a TRE? How do you take a tool that fundamentally does what it says on the box and change the processes inside a TRE today? You know, so for instance, a lot of TREs we have, it's two humans to check all data out. Could one of the humans become Sacro? Is that feasible? What does that look like? I think understanding how, I don't think this project is just a technical project. It's also how we change and evolve, which is sometimes very people focused or very policy but focused, not less technology. So that could happen now if people were interested and wanted to do this. But as Simon said, I think then feeding in, I tried the tool, it didn't do this, it didn't do that, or I didn't understand this. Great, feed it in. We may know some of these facts, we may not know some of these facts, but at March 25, I think if everybody could engage us in March 25 when there's going to be a big event, it's about, I think this early 3-month phase is everyone being as informed as possible so that the contribution at that event can be as fruitful as it's possible to be. But we all know that machine learning and AI is the future, in case you hadn't noticed. But running a TRE, it's very difficult to understand how to safely release models, and things like grey matter and some other work done prior by DARE has demonstrated that actually this is really complicated. And the development of Sacro ML is the sort of next evolution to again do what Sacro does for statistical data, but in AI models. And I think again, it's not just technology; it's the policies and procedures and how we're going to do this and how do we understand it and how do we explain it. So again, I think those TREs that are facing this problem today and a meaningful engagement will really enhance the development of this product, so that we can kind of build the right thing for the right problem that the UK is having today. Next slide, please. And lastly, but not least at all, is Satra has done a fantastic job for defining what a TRE should or shouldn't have, or the minimum specification for a TRE. And this work will be extended to Satra on steroids, I think it was said earlier, to include federation, because it doesn't cover federation. It covers what a normal TRE is today. So as we bring in, you know, federation and automated disclosure control and AI models, the specification of Satra will naturally need to be expanded and evolve itself. But I think it's going to become more than that, in the sense that actually it's going to become turn into perhaps a maturity model, because as we all join together, everyone in the world is building a TRE, which is absolutely fantastic because that's how innovation is driven. But not everybody's at the same maturity level and has all the same capabilities. So Satra can be an accelerator for concentrating on the things that perhaps the UK believes are important, but also it's a way of measuring where on the journey of maturity have you reached with your development or your implementation, and how ready or otherwise, what are the gaps for plugging into a new federated ecosystem. Just like a lot of things, like configuration as code and CI/CD, you know, again, we're going to look at what could we do as an exemplar of a lot of the moving parts. Can we build reference architectures, reference pieces of code, a bit like Lego, that you can kind of take and use yourself? If you've already implemented it, it's not a problem. It's not about dictating what the landscape might look like. But I think we also want to look at more automation about how we measure maturity and measure systems are implemented. And this is obviously going to be very difficult, but we need to work with the ecosystem to kind of understand how to do this going forwards. And the next slide, which I think is the last slide. I just want to jump back to the beginning of the federation one. We won't move the slides. I think it's really important to understand that this is not about lift and shift the data. This is about a federated plane between TREs. It isn't really about a radical change over what a TRE is today. It's about plugging into something that's bigger than the TRE itself. I think that's really important. And also, when we mentioned the frontier earlier, I don't believe we're creating one federated network. We're creating the plumbing and the infrastructure to create as many federated networks as each data domain requires. And it could be that you have a federated plane that is project specific. It could be that you have a national plane. It could be any of these. And that's the whole point of getting behind open source software and working on the deployability of that software so that people can take this and run with it themselves, as well as perhaps initiatives like DARE setting up, bigger, sort of more permanent instances. So I think that's really important going forward. One last thing, I think we also want to create the plumbing and the governance and the infrastructure to facilitate it. We know that the payload of federation is yet to be defined. So therefore we want the ability to plug in other people's things. So plug in Data Shield, plug in Vantage 6, plug in another, it doesn't matter. I think we're not trying to replace existing initiatives. I think what we're trying to do is create the environment for these initiatives to thrive, as well as any new initiatives, so that if you want to develop a new thing, effectively you've only got to focus on the science aspect, and a lot of the plumbing and the information governance thing should be addressed by this project. I'll stop speaking there. And Fergus, do you want to just finish off?
Yep, no worries. I mean, I think the slide sort of says it all, really, right? The intention behind, well, the whole of DARE phase 2, but certainly Trevolution and the opportunity for TREs to come and collaborate with Trevolution. It's all about shaping it, right? And shaping Trevolution and shaping how that evolution sort of happens going forward, right? And so really this is an opportunity and sort of an ask to say, come and collaborate, come and work with the team, the Trevolution team, the DARE UK delivery team. This is an integrated program of work, and we need to work closely together to essentially take it forward. So yeah, that's all I'd say. And I think, Michelle, we probably just open up for questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone for your presentations, especially Simon, who was called on last minute to present. That's Simon Lee, so thank you very much. So yeah, just now open the floor. Any questions that you have? Martin.
So I think from this sort of presentation, I'm trying to kind of work out sort of what the mix of things you sort of feel are well aligned. So it feels like unambiguously you want folk who take what's either already developed in the precursor phase 1 projects or things that are being developed as part of the core components and get those validated, tested in production or our environments and feed them back in. But you also sort of talk about, own implementations and the, bringing particular types of capability like HPC inside the kind of TRE sort of ecosystem. So how much space is there for, like what's the sort of mix that you're looking for, and how much space is there really for that sort of second set of things, or is it really focused on pulling stuff out from core components and getting it kind of tested in a range of environments?
Simon, do you want to respond to that question? Simon T. We can't hear you for some reason.
That's because I was on mute. Okay, yeah. So yeah, Martin, I think you're right. It's kind of like we don't want to boil the ocean. We want people to focus on the thing that they can do the best. But I think there's also not just technical. I think we need to really emphasize that. I think the information governance model is going to need a lot of energy going forwards. A lot of socialization to the idea. Even if your project is to make your TRE ready, or whatever that means, and by ready could be that you need to just try these things out to see where the boundaries of them are. You need to try these out whether they're technically compatible with your implementation, but also get your whole community that you are in that run your TRE socialize the idea that this is coming, and we need to be not ready, but like sort of understand how to play your part really in the bigger thing. So that's a bit hard to specify, isn't it? So I think anything that kind of hits that nail is sort of moving forwards, which means that the things that you could apply for are quite varied.
So I can probably be a bit more specific to help that.
Yeah.
So I think we're sort of looking at something that is kind of deep and far. Like we're looking to get to real project, real data, real research on a HPC sort of AI focused system, with a TRE capability, with the sort of goal that this is then something that this sort of stuff can deploy onto. But given the timelines and the sort of staggered start of the core stuff compared to our stuff, I think for us it's really important that we, you were talking about being able to, you want to code design, but also need to kind of deliver at pace, and that kind of works on the other side as well. So definitely want to co-design and ideally look to sort of fuse implementations in the future. But to get to production, we kind of need to kind of basically retain the ability to kind of do all that development within the control of the partners that we've got with the sort of us and the HPC sort of systems. Does that feel like something that kind of fits, with the right sort of commitments to make to work on compatibility across? Or does it feel like, oh, you're making another implementation, we don't need another one of those? And feel free to be blunt.
No, I think we are looking for co-design or blended design, because it's kind of it is difficult because we've got funders who need milestones delivered, and we need to deliver a thing that's solid. But I think it can be heavily influenced, and I think we really do want to take other people's moving parts and plug them in. And I think that's perhaps where somebody could build something and genuinely it could be deployed as an extension to the design or the implementation. I don't think we need to build everything, if I'd be really blunt. And I think we need to work together. But also, I guess we need to work out how we fund people to make a meaningful contribution. And we understand that. And I think the funding call is complicated. It was said at the beginning, it's not by design, it's the way the funders have put it. We have to live within those constraints. And if anyone can give a better answer than that.
That's a great response, thank you. Question from Alex Woodhead.
Thank you very much. We're very interested in developing federated analysis of AI models executing across multiple SDEs. And we've been primarily partnering with Oxford SDE on this, but we've actually got an expression of interest from Wessex SDE to take part. And my question's one of a practical nature when it comes to the application process. I was asked by our bid manager to help clarify what's meant by co-leads on the application. Does that need to be all parties that are actually involved, or does it mean that the key sort of parties that would actually be doing the work, shall we say? So there'd be Oxford SDE in this case, and Ans Digital, who I represent, was an industry partner who might be doing some of the technical aspects.
That's an interesting question. So, yeah, I don't know, Fergus, do you want to speak to that?
I mean, I'm not sure if I fully understood the question, Alex, but I mean, essentially my answer would be there's no real, I mean, we're not providing a direct steer on that, right? So whoever you think you should have as co-leads can be co-leads. I sort of don't, can you clarify the question maybe?
So I guess what I just wanted to check is if we, because we envisage running it within the Oxford team and also another industry partner, whether or not other SDs were precluded from taking part in a particular project if they weren't referenced as co-leads in the application, or whether or not anyone can get involved after the fact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, understood. That's fine. I don't think there's any issues with that. Again, the main criteria here is really that at least sort of the lead and the you're eligible for UKRI funding, right? So as long as you're on that list, and sort of how you then manage whether they're co-leads at this stage or whether they come in late, we don't have any restrictions really on that, right? So we leave that with you. I don't see any issues with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Jim's just posted something in the chat about kind of UKRI terminology, so that might help to clarify your understanding of those terms.
Thank you.
Okay, going on to Honghan. I hope I pronounced that okay. Oh, apologies, actually. Emma's actually in front.
Yeah, Emma.
Yeah, Emma first.
No worries, thank you. I just wanted to, there was quite a lot, we talked about SACRO and the TRE, the Federation implementations, the governance, and SATRA. are we going to cover all? Is the expectation that the project submitted would cover all aspects of those, or particularly focus on areas? I know, Simon, you just said that areas, different TREs will have different points to get to be ready. Is it that you can focus in on particular ones, or do you need to have the wider spread of all of them?
No, so yeah, it's flexible. So it's based on where your TRE is at and which components you think are most useful or you can support. So you don't have to cover all areas at all. It could be one, it could be two, it could be three. It's just based on where the stage that your capability, sorry, your TRE is at and what would be useful to you.
Lovely, thank you.
Fergus, do you want to add anything to that at all? No, okay. Okay, so Hongan now.
Yeah, thanks. So related to that, but it's the other side of the worry. So we're tackling this in a real world application on free text, working together from Glasgow and Edinburgh. Actually, the project might involve all three parts of the phase one capabilities, but we have our internal discussion. Might find people might, some of these team members says maybe it looks a bit too ambitious if we want to tackle both, federation, this, reference model and output checking, especially for language models. So, but actually, it's, I think maybe we need to pick up one or two. Look at it the other way, your leads in the three different aspects might needs to work with different projects. So how about the capacities be allocated in that way? And this relates to my next question. For the project, do we need to cost for example, one-to-one, for example, I want to do federation, do I need to cost for the particular activities? We might need some kind of technical support from the team. Do we need cost of that? And how to manage this kind of stuff, basically? Sorry, a bit complicated, but it's kind of different aspects for the same thing.
Emily.
Yeah, just for sake of clarification and just make sure I've understood the questions. This is one program. This is one transformational program. So although there are different themes which have built upon previous driver programs, this is very much an integrated solution here. So the reference implementations will consider both federation and automated disclosure control and AI, and so it's not sort of considering you need completely different teams to work with different people on different components. This is a one program that you would be working with. And in terms of kind of the amount of effort or needing to do new stuff, this is not really about generally, and partly it comes back to Martin's original question. This is not really about coming up with and bringing in all of your new ideas, like your own ideas on kind of we've already got a federated solution and we're wanting to try that out. This is very much working with the Treevolution program, giving your input into those new standards that are being developed and new ways of working. And so in terms of sort of capacity, that there shouldn't be huge amounts of work. It needs involvement on governance, on technical assessment and things, but it's not necessarily sort of coming up with new technical solutions yourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, conceptualize, yes. And so do we need, I guess, let's say we want to do both federation using the current implementation in the phase one, particularly for support free text component of the TREs. And we also want to work with the output checking, especially for models. So my second part of the question is about, do we need cost for those things, or we don't have the cost for the collaborations with the existing phase one teams? Does that make sense? In terms of the finance costing, do we need to say we need grade 7, 20% from output checking team to work with us on this. Do we need to do that, or we don't have to do that? We just say we're going to work with the one program on that.
I think the question is resources from the core team.
Yeah.
I mean, I think sorry, just to come in here, I think there's going to be both, right? There will definitely be, I mean, there will be resources from the sort of Trevolution and the Dare UK delivery team, right, in terms of coordinating a lot of this sort of collaboration, really. But obviously there will need to be some resource on your side as well, because we're going to need sort of your context, right? We're going to need your context and how that feeds into then a broader
But just to make sure I'm
context.
understanding the question, your application doesn't need to fund any of the Trevolution people or anything like that to do it. It would only be somebody on your team who might, you know, need to be involved in terms of disclosure control work and inputting into that.
I understand. So I understand I have to cost just like any normal grant application, you have the cost of your own staff, your time, your resource. But because this is a new way of working, you have phase one, which provides service, let's say, for the phase two, some of the projects. So we don't have to worry about that. Is that just to go to this confirmation? Is that right? We don't have to worry about this collaboration between the new project.
I'm sorry, perhaps we could take this one offline, because I'm not quite understanding your question between phase one and phase two, because phase one stuff is finished. So perhaps we could take that one offline, because I don't think we're quite understanding.
All right then. So we'll move on to Antonia.
Hi, thank you very much. And the presentation was really helpful. I guess I'm approaching it from, more, we already have a project dealing with real life data in a TRE. And I guess my approach was to try and use this to, we're currently not doing any kind of AI or machine learning evaluation, but that's what we plan to bring in, and then use some of the tools from phase one, like Sacro. And is that because what was presented, it felt like that wasn't expected till like a later stage than this application. And I just wonder if what I'm thinking is too far ahead to what you're actually thinking, and you're actually looking for more the kind of technical evaluation at the kind of, there's a lot of focus on kind of governance, etc. Everyone's nodding.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly the kind of thing that we're looking for, and would be very useful and can take place, yes, in the first 3 months, you know, because the solutions aren't yet going to be, or the Trevolution project won't yet have started. That side is kind of scoping, preparing, but that is within scope and would be a useful approach.
I think Jim could come in here.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Sacro bit, so the intention is that so we have some support, internal support for Sacro between now and March, from a charity. We need people to help us work on the look and feel of the Sacro stuff. Obviously, the AI stuff needs more work in terms of explaining risk and stuff like that. What will be happening in the project is that behind the scenes, we'll be ripping out all the hard-coded bits of Sacro and replacing it with metadata-driven stuff around risk statements in formal specifications, DPV and things. That shouldn't affect the experience. So we need people to be trying it out, testing it, saying this works, that doesn't work. So when it comes to the AI bit, saying, yeah, I don't understand these metrics, or this one's really useful for us. So people doing that will be incredibly useful, because the AI bit, frankly, it's not going to be done in 2 years. We'll get a long way, and we already have support for some kind of models, but no one's going to sit here and say, yeah, we're going to be able to help you do disclosure control of large language models that you've trained from scratch in 2 years, because it's not practical. So the sooner people can start, the better.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Rebecca lost her position before, so I'm just going to let her go in ahead. So Rebecca Wilson, please.
Thank you. I had a question about the PPIE strand in the Trevolution kind of proposal, because we obviously do our sort of regional, local PPIE and stuff as well. But I don't. In our proposal, we are going to propose to do a piece of PPIE work, but I just don't want to conflict and or duplicate something that is an aim or an output of the tree evolution thing, because that's then a waste of my time as well. So I was just wondering if someone could just give maybe like just an overview of what the perhaps aims or the key outputs from the PPIE of tree evolution will be, just to help us understand where we can contribute in terms of PPIE.
Yeah, Fergus.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in on this one. So Rebecca, in terms of the PPIE plans, we're sort of working through a bit of that at the moment, because there's going to be an integrated sort of PIE plan, if you like, between the Dare UK delivery team, so sort of the central Dare UK and Tree Evolution. And we're looking to make that one integrated plan. And that's because really there's sort of different types of conversations you want to have, different types of engagements at different levels. Right. And so there's going to be basically a plan developed around that. I'm not sure if any of the leads want to come in on any specific plans at this stage, but that's sort of the idea. And I don't think, my impression, I'm not sure exactly what kind of activities you're planning, right? But if those are really plans around specifically your context, your TRE, then certainly I don't think we should stop those, right? I think that those should happen. You will obviously have the chance to dock into sort of broader activities, bigger activities that are happening across Dare UK as well. And we will be setting up opportunities to do that. But I wouldn't cut PIE activities that are specific for what you're proposing and your context. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that the outputs from our proposed PIE could be reused and useful to basically any SD or TRE anyway, or any mixed infrastructures as well. So it's just as long as there's a route for this sort of regional PPIE activity, for example, to have a way to be useful within this, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, there will be a route, Rebecca. There is a plan to have a route. Yeah, there will be.
Thank you. Okay, next, Kate.
Hi, everyone. So I was going to come to you with a consortium of partners across the north of England. And now I'm completely rethinking that. So this is going to be partners from Northwest, Northeast, North Cumbria, Yorkshire, and Humber. And we were putting something together for us to kind of implement across a kind of northern partnership. I'm thinking now that we could actually each individually apply. I mean, I guess maybe what I'm asking is it worth us applying as a consortium and with a single application with our intention of how we were planning to work as a consortium across the north? Or would you be expecting an application from each of us individually?
Fergus, go ahead.
I mean, happy to come in, Kate. Without knowing the specifics, I wouldn't really want to tell you like which way to do it, to be honest. I mean, if you think that a consortium across the north makes sense and is a way to do this and the resourcing sort of works, great, right?
I think it was largely around our expertise, because obviously I got Sacro up and running previously, so I'm going to be like a kind of useful partner across the north of how to do that. We have another team within the north who has done a lot of work around federation of cross-domain organizations in the north. Then we have somebody else who has actually already had Data Shield up and running, and obviously could very much use that expertise of getting Trifix, for example, up and running across our consortium. And we were very much hoping to have that kind of link across the north because we are an underserved region. So we were thinking of it in that way around our expertise and our experience. But I guess what we were also, and each of us have our own PPIE groups within our different regions. I guess my concern, then the thing that we were struggling with quite a lot is around the finance of trying to do that. And so again, I'm wondering, does it make sense for us to each apply individually, because then we can maximize the award across each of us? Or is it possible if we go in as a kind of larger body of organizations to apply for slightly more funding. In other words, I'm trying to figure out what to do about the paperwork here.
Understood.
Simon's
So
shaking his head, so at least it makes sense to Simon what I'm saying.
So I'll come in on a point here because it's actually why I raised my hand as well. It was sort of a general point, but I think it relates to what you're saying, Kate. So again, the funding restrictions are the funding restrictions, right? That's sort of the maximum is the maximum per application. So in terms of how you want to manage that, I'd probably leave that to you. What I would say, and this is the point I was going to make, was that obviously the panel that are going to be considering these applications, right, they are going to look at, there is a portfolio view at the end, right, of that panel where they look at the portfolio of applications that are fundable, and they will need to make decisions and finally a recommendation on that portfolio. And there's a number of different axes to that portfolio, right? Is this too ambitious? Is there really enough resource to do this? Is this far too focused? Is this far too narrow? Again, and maybe we want some narrow, maybe we want some broad. There is kind of a portfolio view that the panel will have to take, right? So I'm not going to really give more context than that. We are looking for a spread, right? We're not looking for only really large applications that are covering all themes and, you know, no smaller applications that are only covering one theme. Like we're looking for a spread across a portfolio here.
Okay.
It doesn't really answer your question.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have a rethink about this then. Thank you.
I'm conscious we're up on time, but I'd just like to take the final question from Martin. If you need to jump off, feel free, and just a thank you in advance then for joining. But yes, Martin, your question.
Well, yeah, just to sort of follow up on that PPIE one, but from the other direction. Fergus, I wasn't quite sure what you said at the end there, but in terms of where the extent to which we can kind of lean into and rely on being able to integrate and leverage common PIE efforts across Treevolution and there versus you know, the requirement to sort of show we've sort of considered and provisioned for PIE sort of within our own work. I feel the steer in your answer to the previous question was we want to run PIE as a tightly integrated thing, coherent across all of the work that's sort of funded across the programme as a whole. But I am also conscious from having been on the other side of sort of panel reviews that like when these things are left out or sort of feel minimal, that can sort of be basically sinking an application before.
Yeah. So let me just make it clear. PIE is a requirement, right? So I guess my point was there is the expectation that you will have in each of the applications PIE for your context and the context of that application. Of course, there will be routes to integrating that with some of the other work that will be happening both within Treevolution, but also the broader DARE UK, and in fact, Treevolution, the broader DARE UK PIE plans will be integrated as well, right? So, you know, there is that requirement. I wouldn't advise, you know, if you've got it in for your context, keep it in is sort of the steer I would give there. I don't know, Jim, if you want to come in.
Yeah, but the funds are limited though, so don't sort of go for we're going to create a whole new PIE work stream to do this, that, and the other. I think it's more around saying we already have a PIE panel that we regularly engage with, and we'll work with the Treevolution programme on their PIE workstream to make sure that we can bring some of those representatives to look at the new solutions and put their input into it, or something, you know, that those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that very deliberately, because funds are limited, and there is little point duplicating effort, because there's so much going on in this space. That the Treevolution, one of the first things happening in Treevolution is bringing together of PIE people, not just from DARE, but from within a wider body where people on the Treevolution bid know are involved in other activities as well, and just saying, how do we make the best use of the limited amounts of money that we've got? How do we make sure that we're reaching as many different people and as many different communities, and not just duplicating effort, saying, hey, here's TRE, that's a good thing, but it's about doing the specific stuff to complement everything else that's going on.
Thank you. Okay, lovely. So thank you all for joining us today. Apologies for taking 6 minutes more of your time. We'll call it to a close there, and good luck with your applications. We look forward to receiving them.